It is the start of another iRacing season, and for week one, it was going to be all about iRacing's newest content. Not only am I taking on my first ranked races in the new Porsche 992.2 Cup car, but we will be doing so at iRacing's newest track, Miami International Autodrome. The question this week was simply how quickly could I get a handle on an unfamiliar style of car on a brand new circuit? No doubt some of those lessons were going to be learned the hard way. Right, let's dive in to race number one. So welcome to the new Miami circuit. Now I've got to be honest that I was pleasantly surprised with how much fun this track was to drive. Apart from being characterized by a bunch of blue paint on all the runoff areas, there were two main sections of this circuit that were quite technical and quite tricky to get right, posing quite a big challenge. That section there through turns 7 and 8 with a basically blind apex thanks to the A-pillar of this Porsche Cup car, which needed to be a very crucial exit for the long back straight. And then this second tricky section here, the back part of the circuit, turns 11 through to 16, which includes this very long right-hander, and then this very technical chicane sequence that requires a lot of commitment and a lot of risk to find a ton of speed. Crucial exit once again out of turn 16, and then this final hairpin corner, quite easy to outbrake yourself, particularly in the lighting conditions you'll see in this 13 lap race coming up. But that one there is my first flying lap of qualifying in this Porsche Cup car, a 156.5, which despite the fact I messed up my second lap in qualifying, put me in position 6. Now, standing start, I have not done one of these since my first MX-5 race in rookies, and yes, I jumped the start, the only one on the grid to do so, reacting to the red light coming on rather than the red light going out for the green. And yes, it's a black flag and a drive-through for my first ever Porsche Cup race. Quite disappointed in myself on that one, a very silly mistake, but we're here to learn and we are learning the hard way. Despite my disappointment, I do need to get around this first flying lap and at least hold on to some position. These Porsche Cup races can be quite chaotic at times, so we're up the front, we need to at least have a clean first lap before trying to serve this drive-through. Now coming up to turns 7 and 8, and you can see here on cold tyres, very cautious here as we come towards that turn, trying to nail the exit here, and we at least come out of that one still holding on to the P6, a little bit of space behind, so it's a relatively calm first lap near the front of the field here. Coming out of the final corner on that first lap, and we are going to dive into the pit lane, testing out this pit entry for the first time here at Miami. And as we come out of the lane, we are at roughly the tail of the field, hoping to make up some places using some of the speed, see what we can do. Now immediately we are going to gain a couple of spots here with two cars spun out on the outside there of turn number 5, and then after a couple of laps we've worked our way back towards the tail of this field, and we're pretty eager to try and move our way forward. Coming through the final hairpin, a little 0x contact with the car in front, and we're going to get a little bit of a slipstream down the front straight here. And as I said, we're quite eager to try and make a move. We're going to pull to the inside here and try get our nose in at turn 1, but unfortunately we get a bit deep into the ABS there. Quite an ambitious move, not really on if we're perfectly honest, and that car recognises that we're going to go long. We absolutely haul on the brakes there, make sure to give that position back, hand up to acknowledge that one. Too ambitious, and it was a good reminder that I do need to be patient here. Despite my better qualifying position, I can't expect to just plough my way through this field. On to lap number 6 now, and we have managed to at least get the first sector much better than in previous laps, showing the predicted time there a more consistent race pace that I had been showing in practice. Charging down the back straight here, you see I'm trying to get back on terms with these cars in front, and then unfortunately completely missed the braking marker there down into turn 11. That 150 meter board going straight past it, trying to haul on the brakes and let the car stop, but we're making some silly mistakes here, trying to push a little bit too hard after my jump start error, and that is causing me to make some silly ones. Down into turn 8 on lap number 7, we're going to make another mistake here, pushing a little bit too deep into turn number 8, losing the rear of the car, and around we go. So this week was going to be all about learning both the track and this unfamiliar car, and I was certainly learning those lessons the hardest way. Start of lap number 9, and we've at least set a decent race pace lap time. Yellow flag indicator counting down, and there is a spun car on the inside of the circuit. Really good way to show off that yellow flag indicator of how that overlay actually works. Super helpful. And we've at least made up a few positions, mostly through mistakes of people in front of us. Pushing on though, we've at least found a little bit more consistency in the race pace here, and we are starting to make our way back towards the group of cars that were in front of us. They're battling hard, so we're going to have a small opportunity here at the very end of the race to at least try and nab a few spots and make that iRating loss a little less painful. Onto the back straight now, coming down towards turn number 11 here on the very last lap. And this was a gap that was around 5 to 6 seconds, so we have done a really good job to bring our way back here. The car in front though is a lapped car, so as we come into turn number 11, gaining on these cars ahead, car wide there. I really need this lapped car to get out of the way at this very moment. Unfortunately, he does not pull completely out of the way. We're going to have to follow him through the chicane, and you can see it's really holding me up here. My chance of trying to get to the back of this group down towards the last turn is disappearing very quickly. That car does pull out of the way to let us by, but unfortunately with the gap in front there isn't going to be an opportunity to get through here. So it's going to be a 17th place for my first Porsche Cup race, and I've got to admit I was a bit disappointed with that, with the pace that I showed in qualifying, but we are learning, and that is all this week was all about, and enjoying this Miami circuit, which was also a really big surprise to me, and as I said at the start, a very fun track to get a handle on. Through to the finish line for the end of race 1. Certainly we can do better. Let's jump into race number 2. So into my fastest lap of qualifying for the week, we're going to take you for a lap of this Miami circuit. On the brakes before the 100 meter board, and a little bit of that inside curb at turn 1. Through turns 2 and 3, you can use the curbs a little bit to hook the car around, a little bit of a lift, and then hard on the throttle out to this outside wall, charging down to turn number 4. Down to 4th gear, again on that curb, trying to hook the car around, and then use lots and lots of these 2 flat curbs at turns 5 and 6. And now through turns 7 and 8, down to 3rd, down to 2nd, light trail braking to keep the car rotated, trying to aim for that exit and run that gap between the curb and the wall on the exit down to this back straight here, through the kinks at turns 9 and 10, and then it's all about the braking zone coming up at turn 11. Second flying lap, tyres are warming up a little bit, but you can't overcommit to this one. Trying to brake a bit before the 150 meter board, getting out to that outside wall, second gear, trailing on through, and now this tight tricky sequence at the latter part of the lap. Getting it really close to the wall there through the right hander, and now down to second, all the way just missing that inside curb and trying to get over that curb at the second part of the chicane as much as possible. Light trail and a good exit out of turn 16 sets you up for the last part of the lap, and we're nearly half a second up on my previous best lap, which I was hoping was going to put me somewhere in the middle of this much stronger field than my first sort of race there. We've got a bunch of 3,000 iRated drivers in this one, so I was looking for a clean finish to the lap there, finding the 150 meter board in the sunshine and getting the car stopped, missing the apex a tiny bit, so we're going to lose a 10th on the way to the line, using some of that inside curb there to make the course a little bit shorter, but we are going to come across the line 156.2, and it in fact will be good enough for 5th place on the grid of this one, which, as you can see by my reaction there, is a little bit higher than I wanted to be. We're surrounded by some very good drivers, and I've got to admit the nerves at the start of this one were very high. We're going to get the green light. We are not jumping the start of this one, so there's already an improvement from race number 1, and now it is about surviving, trying to be as firm as I can while being cautious on this first lap, just to get myself around here. Car number 8 was up the inside at turn number 1. He gets in front through turns 2 and 3. Got a decent exit out of turn 3, and we're going to look a little bit to the inside. Decide to come back and follow this car through turns 4 and 5. And just, as I said, just trying to be safe, just trying to be clean. And I see these Porsche Cup races can be a little bit of a mess, it's particularly on lap number 1. Looking for a decent exit here out of turn number 8, and we get a half decent one here. We're right under the rear wing of car number 8, just 0.2 of a second back. The slipstream effect of these cars is very good, so as we come through turns 9 and 10, effectively a back straight here at Miami, we are going to get the slipstream. I'm going to pull to the outside here as car 8 defends the inside a little bit, looking to break a deeper around the outside here at turn 11. Almost keeping the nose in there, but he just comes across. We have to back out of it a little bit coming through this latter section of the course, but we are keeping it clean here, putting a little bit of pressure on car 8 and at least having ourselves a strong opening lap. Coming out of turn 16, not quite making the apex there, and there's a bit of a mess behind. This is just why it's so important to try and qualify near the front of this field. Despite all those stronger I-rated drivers, still a bit of a mess back there at turn 16. So we're at least clear, and as we come through to finish lap number 2, a bit of a surprise early on. We actually are going to set the fastest lap of the race to this point, and it gave me a tiny bit of confidence that perhaps I should be racing up near the front with these guys, and we were going to have to see how the rest of the race unfolds. Can we continue to stay here in 6th position? It would be a solid amount of I rating, and if we can keep it clean, some nice safety rating gain as well. Coming through turns 4 and 5 again, so just using more and more of that curb than I did in race number 1, so definitely learning, but unfortunately we make a bit of a mess here of turn 8. We get on the throttle a bit too early, got to back out of it, and that obviously kills my exit. Car number 3 directly on the rear bumper here. This one is going to be tricky to defend. He's looking to be on the outside as we go down to turn number 11. He looks like he's committing to that outside, but as we get towards the braking zone, he crosses back over. To move to the inside would be too much movement under brakes. He does get the job done there down into turn 11, and just like that, the confidence of the lap before begins to get sapped away here as we lose one position. The very next lap, and it is a similar treatment here coming out of turn number 8. Green and black car there, car number 6, exactly the same move as the lap prior, so we do go down one spot, but we are gifted that 7th position back there with an altercation up in front through turns 12 and 13, so back to 7th position we go. Now the very next lap, charging down to the final corner, you see that setting sun really playing havoc, trying to find the brake markers. A bit of battling from the cars in front certainly puts me back into the action here, and if we can see the new fastest lap of the race set by the leader, real pace in these Porsche cars are 154.7. That is certainly a time that I cannot obtain here. Start of this lap though, and it's cars 3 and 6 that are really battling hard here, side by side through turns 1 through to 3. Bit of a roadblock situation in front, and some decent driving from car number 19 behind to not get really caught in the action here, as I'm having to move left and right to react a bit to what's going on in front. We're going to get a run around the outside here down into turn 7, and it is certainly not the best decision. I don't make a good job of it, and that allows the car to slip up the inside, and the car that was following also going up the inside. We unfortunately make a bit of contact there as we come towards the corner, and I've got to say it was a bit of a messy opening part to that lap all around. You see there the battling, car number 6 almost defending position against car 3 into turn 1, but you see we're right behind here, slow everywhere, no real way to go around these guys. And as we come down to turn 7, I'd say I don't do a good job trying to follow around the outside at turn 7. It allows the two cars to slip up the inside, and as we go towards the apex of turn 8, unfortunately it's that side-to-side contact. And as we look at the chase cam, I've got to admit this one is definitely on me. Apologies to this driver. We've just turned in a little bit too early there, and that contact has really not been good for that inside car, so a formal apology to that driver. Lap number 8 though, and we are all eyes forward, trying to at least hold on to these cars in front. They were starting to show a tiny bit more pace than me, and I was having to just do my very best to try and match those lap times ahead. I think overall though, I was driving much better than I was in race number 1, learning about where those issues were, particularly the missed braking markers and where you can push a little bit too hard. But as a result, I was probably a tiny bit cautious in some other areas, and was just missing a little bit of pace versus these guys. As the race went on, however, it was the gap behind that was starting to close down, not by huge chunks, but by those small margins once again, and any little mistake here was really going to put me under pressure for the latter part of the race. As we come to the end of lap number 11, again, really that sun right in the eyes here. We're going to miss our braking marker by a tiny bit, run a little bit wide here, and what was a 3-second gap just a few laps ago is now coming down close to a second to that car behind. It was quite clear that I wasn't going to be getting back in touch with those cars up ahead, so for the last 2 laps of the race, it was going to be all about trying to get as good as possible the lap times that I can, not necessarily trying anything new to find some speed, and holding off that car number 9 behind, trying to seal a nice P8 position. Coming through the first sector here, and it's been a slightly messy first few corners, just so easy to lose a little bit of time around each part of the track here, losing more time as we come through turns 7 and 8, and ultimately at this point I was probably just trying a little bit too hard, now almost half a second down on my best lap time to that point, 0.8 of a second now for that car behind. And I was really having to give myself a bit of a pep talk here just to calm the nerves a little bit and do my very best, particularly on some of these exits as we come through the chicane, just see how close that car behind was getting, and it was going to be crucial to get these exits right as we approach the last lap of the race. A decent exit out of the final corner though was going to put myself about a second up on that car behind, so I knew I had it in me just to try and nail this very final lap. And this will be that final lap, lap 13, coming it down through turn 1 here, looking for a strong opening sector, just being a little bit more patient here at turn 3 than I had been on previous laps. In fact, we're going to go just into the green there on the predicted time, so it is as strong as I can go through sector number 1. A nice job through turn 4, using a bit more of that curb through turn 5 and turn 6, so we're at least doing what we can, but that car behind just starting to get within the slipstream range, but very fortunately though, we do get a half decent exit out of turn number 8, and we're going to go 0.7 of a second back. Not quite close enough for that driver to be having a look at turn number 11, but he was going to be closing in, and there was going to be some real pressure at the last part of this lap. Now, braking zone at turn 11, you see I'm a little bit more cautious than he is, and he gains right up there 0.4 of a second as we come through this tricky chicane sequence, and I knew at this point it was about keeping this part of the lap clean and trying to get a good exit out of turn number 16, and that required again a tiny bit more patience than I had been at the rest part of the race. And we do get a decent exit there, and it's going to be probably just enough, slightly better exit than the car behind. You see we're less than a tenth, or about a tenth down on my very best lap, so I had at least finding myself back to the point that I was at the start of the race. Ultimately, just being a bit more patient was actually producing a little bit more speed. Nicely into the final corner, and that was going to be enough to seal this P8 position. as I said, a bit of pressure at the last part, and I got to admit I was a little bit relieved to at least get to the very end of this one. A relatively satisfying result considering the strength of field that I was in, despite losing positions and probably not showing the strength of the drivers around me. A P8 was a nice gain both in iRating and safety rating. Now, unfortunately, a busy week around the festive season did mean that I had very limited time to race in the latter part of week one. I did get one final opportunity to dive into another fixed race, but a mess up in qualifying and then a first lap incident really did put an end to any final result here. Despite that though, I was satisfied with my performances earlier in week one, and I've got to say that there's certainly some potential there for me to get grips with this car and get some half decent results. Certainly there's more lessons to learn, and I'm excited to get back into this car very soon and show you guys some more of the Porsche Cup series. Of course, let me know in the comments what sort of experiences did you have around the new Miami circuit. Obviously we had GT3 cars there as well, which I did not get an opportunity to race, but let me know in the comments what you think of the Miami circuit. Is it a good one or is it a bit of a dud? I certainly found it pleasantly surprising and I really enjoyed it. Just want to wish everyone a big Merry Christmas out there and hope you have a great New Year's period. We'll be back soon with some new videos, so if you're new around here and want to see more of the iRacing action, then feel free to subscribe to the channel. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Race hard, stay positive. We'll see you soon in the next one. Cheers.